and welcome back to this very special episode of Sugar and Frights. Today, I'm going to be bringing you along with me as I make a cake for my favorite holiday, which is Valentine's Day, and talking about a few Valentine's themed movies that I watched for this very occasion. So, I'll be traveling later in the week, and I didn't have time to put together my own recipes, so I will share the cake recipe as well as the buttercream recipe that I use for all of my fancy decorated cakes. So, the first movie I'll talk about is the original My Bloody Valentine from 1981. I hadn't seen it before. This one was directed by George Mihalka, I believe. It's a Canadian slasher film. And the IMDb synopsis for this one states a decades old folktale surrounding a deranged murderer killing those who celebrate Valentine's Day turns out to be true to legend when a group defies the killer's order and people start turning up dead. What this movie offers most is Canadian accents and a classic 80s aesthetic. Outside of that, it moved pretty slow for me personally. I do love the design of the killer, it's unique and not something we had seen before. And overall, he is a pretty petty killer, and we love seeing that. So, this movie takes place in the fictional town of Valentine's Bluffs, which is very cute. And they are putting on their first Valentine's dance after 20 years. So, why no dance for so long? Because I guess on Valentine's Day, all those 20 years ago, two employees of the local mine left early for a Valentine's dance without checking the gas levels, which resulted in an explosion that left one guy trapped in the mine. And eventually, he needed to feed on human flesh to survive, ultimately losing his mind, and then subsequently, a year later, murdering two supervisors, cutting out their hearts and displaying them in Valentine's boxes. He also, and here's the petty part, he warned them never to have another Valentine's dance again. So 20 years goes by, and they get to the point where they think it's safe. The killer had been locked away in an institution for the last 20 years. No one's seen or heard from him, so they think that they're good to start this dance up again. But people start getting murdered in vaguely Valentine's-related ways, so the local law enforcement ultimately cancels the dance. But the kids of the town, the teenagers that we follow throughout the movie, they decide to party anyway and do so in the mine. So after this, we get a few more kills that are, less Valentine's themed. And it turns out that the killer is not the original killer, but the son of one of the supervisors who was killed by the original killer, who I guess sort of just adopted a vengeance against Valentine's Day as well. I found this part a little confusing and wasn't really sure if I believed the motive overall. I did find the kills to be a little lackluster, but I read later that this film was pretty heavily censored for its gore content, and so I'm thinking that what I saw was potentially the censored version. As I was looking through IMDb for images for this video, I came across this, which was not shown in the movie that I watched, the version that I watched. So maybe if I rewatch this one, I will seek out the uncensored version. The best kill by far was the hot dog water kill. One of the victims is submerged and drowned in a boiling vat of hot dogs. And it's pretty goofy, it's pretty silly. Later on, when the teenagers are eating out of said pot, they find his boiled heart in it. I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5. It wasn't my favorite. The best part was definitely the old school Valentine's aesthetic. And I don't know, the reveal was just a little confusing and vague for me. So the next one I watched had to be the 2009 remake, which was directed by Patrick Lussier. This was the only one of the three that I had seen prior to this watch. I went to see it in theaters in 2009, and I remember wearing the paper cutout 3D glasses, because of course this is a 3D movie. The appeal for this movie is that there is 100% more boobs than in the original, so that's fun. Also starring Jensen Ackles as Dean Winchester. Literally, these are two different frames from Supernatural and My Bloody Valentine, and I challenge you to figure out which is which. I'd say the kills in this one are less imaginative, less fun, less Valentine's themed. They also have a really awkward film style that you can instantly tell was made for 3D with lots of things kind of popping out, flying out. And it makes it pretty silly to watch normally, to be honest. This one relies pretty heavily on the mental illness trope, which didn't age well for me personally. You have characters dry swallowing pills, a lot of talk of being in the asylum, that sort of thing. So you have the same idea as the original in this one. There's an explosion in a mine, someone gets trapped and goes crazy, but instead of developing a hatred for Valentine's Day specifically, he just develops a hatred for partying teenagers. So he comes back after this mine explosion, kills a bunch of teenagers, and then subsequently dies, I believe. And then his son comes back after being traumatized in this massacre in the mines, and the kills start up again once he sort of decides to sell the mine. The kills, again, not very interesting, not very Valentine's Day themed. We do get the heart in the Valentine's Day box and a couple of like letters, poems, that sort of thing. So, one thing I didn't mention about the original that is the same in the remake is that we follow a love triangle where one member of the love triangle ultimately ends up to be the killer. And in this one, it is unfortunately Dean Winchester, which I think we were all bummed about. You have a couple of neat sequences towards the end. There's one in particular where he's breaking light bulbs with the pickaxe, which was a shot that was in the original. And as he's doing this, he sort of flashes in between himself and himself as the killer. I gave this one 2.5 stars as well. It's fine. It's a fine little movie. It's really awkward to watch with the 3D way of filming, but I don't know if I'd rewatch it again. So, on to the most recent release. I'll be talking about Hard Eyes, which was released earlier this month. It was directed by Josh Rubin. So, where romance was a side note in both My Bloody Valentine movies, it takes center stage in Hard Eyes, a movie which feels more like a rom-com that was rudely interrupted by a slasher film. This movie also feels very Gen Z. This is driven home right off the bat with a cartoonishly vapid influencer couple who meet their demise via heart-themed killing implements, which super cute, definitely one of my favorite parts of the movie. We are then jerked into the rom-com portion, complete with meet cute and kind of an excruciating conversation about the two main characters' relationship with love, one of them being a dreamer and one of them being a realist or a pessimist, actually. We follow them through a series of B minus personal score kills as the tension sort of waxes and wanes between the two main characters. In the end, it's revealed that the killers are just one of those couples that you see on Tinder looking for their unicorn, which is goofy and campy. The climax also takes place in a St. Valentine's chapel, which has been filled with hundreds of lit candles, really demonstrating the commitment to the bit. And in true rom-com fashion, the two protagonists overcome their issues with love and presumably live happily ever after until the sequel, potentially. This was a fine little holiday slasher movie, and it had a more unique premise than I was expecting. I don't think I've seen a rom-com slasher before. I'm not sure if there is one. If you know of a good one, please let me know. This would be probably my pick out of the three for like a cozy date night. It was definitely the most fun and the most interesting. This was a 3 out of 5 stars for me. The best moment by far was when the female protagonist throws her rabbit vibrator at the killer. Definitely a really goofy and fun little moment. So there you have it. I'm starting to think that I'm not particularly a holiday horror person. There's not many that I can think of that I really enjoyed all that much, but it's my favorite holiday, and I'm just getting started on this channel, and I had fun watching these 3 movies, so I appreciate y'all being on this journey with me. And here is the final cake. Please follow, subscribe, like, etc. for more horror and baking content.